So welcome to this space, Greensboro, High Point, pieces of Reedsville, pieces of Winston-Salem. So as you know, we've been gerrymandered, but that just means that we're all learning how to work even more closely together despite constructs and barriers that might have been put together. So welcome to you. Give yourselves a hand for coming to this 6th Congressional District organizing tour. I am Joyce Hobson Johnson. I live in Greensboro. I'm a part of the Poor People's Campaign. I am part of the North Carolina and the National, as people say, but we're just one organism working together. And most of you know me as being one of the co-executive directors of the beloved Community Center. So welcome to this space. We're here at the New Zion Missionary Baptist Church, which has been a part of the ongoing struggle for justice and equity in this city and beyond. So we will take just a few minutes for the pastor, as we say, the angel, the shepherd of this particular church, Reverend William Wright, to come and greet you as well and to offer an opening prayer, to be followed by my husband and co-executive director of Beloved Community Center, Reverend Nelson Johnson. Then we will proceed with the powerful program. First, you will hear from some testifiers. As you know, much of our focus is on getting the vote out from among our poor and low wealth. Most of you in this room. But we found that such a large percentage of our voting public, already registered, a lot of them, are poor and low wealth. We want that power, that voice to be heard, that demand through the ballot box to be heard. That's why we've come together this morning, well, this afternoon. So we will hear from them, workers, community organizers, immigrants, all of us, God's people, coming together to learn how to have our voices raised and lifted at the ballot box, and to learn how to walk together, to learn how to work together where our power can really be felt. First by ourselves, some of us don't even know our power, but also by those that we need to hold accountable once they get elected. So let me move on and invite to his own podium area, the Reverend William F. Wright. Thank you so much.
Almost forgot what I was going to say. We certainly want to welcome all of you to this occasion. This is certainly a needful time, if there ever was one. And there's an old spiritual that says, walk together, children. Don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting on the other side. And when I think about the lyrics of that song, I think about the needs politically and socially, and a mixture of people who are experiencing health disparities and those who are hungry and in this community. And so this is a need. We need to come together, and it is my esteemed pleasure to welcome all of you, and that you thought about New Zion as your meeting place. And we want you to be comfortable and to know that we are in solidarity with the movement. And Dr. Barber is a good friend of mine, and I will be delighted to see him, and he's on his way. And so we thank you and we welcome you from the New Zion family. We hope that you are comfortable, our teams, as well as the faith community and other groups and churches gathered together have made you comfortable in being here. So it's always good to have my good friend Reverend Johnson and Joyce. We want to always thank you for your being here, and to acknowledge Dr. Barber's national team from the Repairers of the Breach, and of course the Poor People's Campaign, and the local supporters, and all of those I want to mention. We do welcome you to this occasion, this time of reflection, time of learning, and time of rallying. We've got to get something burning deep within us that says that we are better than this as Americans. And I don't know about you, but my heart cries when I see what's going on today. I never thought that I would live to see things as divided as they are today. But I believe that God has given us a unique opportunity, even in this COVID environment, to band ourselves together and to be better than we are, and to maybe show a nation how it can get in touch with itself. And so we hope that this will be a powerful rally opportunity, as well as a period of training, so that we can leave here energized and excited about the possibility of getting everybody to the polls. People who say, and I know you run across, say that there's no need, my vote doesn't count. Your vote does count. And we want you to be assured that, we'll do everything in our power to see that those who may have trouble getting to the polls have an opportunity to express themselves through the democratic process. So I'm just thankful, and you shouldn't give a preacher too long the mic. You need to time him, because he'll get up here and just stay longer than expected. But God bless you, and if you need anything, just let some of our attendants here know, and we will serve you. Amen.
Amen. Are you ready to do some work? Are you ready to grow as a community and as a people? Are you ready to save our democracy? Well, you're in the right place. We want to express deep appreciation and sincere gratitude for Reverend Wright, the angel of this house, and for the membership here. And of course, to the leadership of this outstanding church. We are going to push forward pretty fast now, and I need not spend much time emphasizing that we are a terribly divided nation. You know that, I know that, they know that, and the nation is becoming even more divided. And part of the tool that is being used is to suppress the vote. Your vote, my vote, poor folks' vote, black folks' vote, Latino votes. They want to only count a certain portion of the vote. So we are here today to ensure that that's not going to work. And I just want to say that it's good to be here, and we want everybody to relax, feel good, and we're going to do some learning, and we're going to follow this with some training. We may not do all of that today, but we got your name, we got your address. Are you ready to walk together, children? Walk together, children. Walk together, children, and don't you get weary, because there's light on the other side of darkness. There's hope on the other side of what looks like hopelessness. And there's a new life for us when we save this democracy, give everybody the right to vote, use that right save this nation, and live in the great peace and abundance that God has given to us. Let's push it on.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kate Ziegler. I'm one of the national organizing co-directors of Repairs of the Breach and the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival.
Good afternoon. I'm Brianna Kemp. I'm a national organizer with Repairs of the Breach and the Poor People's Campaign.
We are so grateful that everybody is here today, and we are here to really unlock the power of the vote in this district. The most important part of the program and of the work and the movement, we say, is leading from the bottom up, which is making sure that we are prioritizing and hearing the issues and the demands from the people most impacted. So right now, I am very happy that Brianna and I will introduce the impacted leaders and testifiers of today's program here in Greensboro.
My name is Vivian Henry. I'm from Minnesota. I'm one of the 1.8 million people in the state forced to live in poverty.
Across the state of North Carolina
as hell
and in this country.
Because I shouldn't have.
I'm so grateful to all of the testifiers who are here today and honored to introduce them to you. First, we're going to see a video of Vivian Henry, a powerful leader from Minnesota who shared her testimony on June 18th in Washington, D.C. Then we'll hear from Tammy Worthy, a lifetime resident of Greensboro. Then Minerva Cisneros, a 25-year resident of Winston-Salem. We'll hear from Dinasha Williams, a McDonald's worker and a leader in Raise Up. We'll hear from Sangria Noble from the North Carolina Second Chance Alliance. And then we'll see a video of Beth Schaefer, a powerful Raise Up leader from South Carolina who also spoke in Washington, D.C. on June 18th.
My name is Vivian Henry. I'm from Minnesota. I'm one of the 1.8 million people in the state forced to live in poverty. I'm pissed as hell because I shouldn't have to be here today because poverty is a policy choice in the richest nation in the world. I battle 4 mental health challenges that have been extremely debilitating in most of my adult life. For the past 7 years, I've had to battle many times for Social Security disability. I survive on just $585 a month from state general assistance and food stamps. If I didn't live in public housing, I would be homeless. General assistance wasn't raised during COVID and hasn't increased with inflation. Recently, I started donating plasma because I don't have enough money to meet my basic needs. This is immoral to be forced to live this way. The state of Minnesota has declared me disabled 3 times, but that doesn't automatically approve me for Social Security disability. This is asinine. How can I be declared disabled by the state only to have the federal government deny me benefits? I had breast cancer scare in 2018, and now I need a 3D mammogram and breast MRI each year for the rest of my life. But I fear losing my Medicaid due to the lack of consciousness of many politicians who could care less about whether I live or die. I'm here to say that if Congress can repeatedly afford to give corporate welfare to the rich, then Congress can afford universal health care for all. So that people don't go bankrupt or are forced to use a GoFundMe to cover medical expenses. Scarcity is a massive lie. This is why we're here. We won't be silent anymore.
Thank you. Give it up. Give it up. put this down. So. Great afternoon, everyone. I know this is not a AA meeting, but I want to say my name is Tammy Worthy, and I'm a product of public housing. I want to say to you that housing is a dire need. And right now, you got people that thought their housing was secure. They were so glad to get Section 8. But now you got Section 8, you better be careful. You got to worry about where you're going to stay because they're not getting anybody to rent to them. And then if somebody rents to them, they have to pay over the amount that Section 8 gives them to pay so they can have a decent place to stay. I know, for one, public housing is where I learned to believe in myself. It's where I learned to advocate. It's where I learned to open up my big mouth and to know that my thoughts, my actions, they matter. So just like I learned that, I don't think they're learning that now in public housing. They're not learning that we are all one family. And if one thing hurts one person, it hurts the whole community. So what now is that we have to, there's no excuse that my grandmother had to go out and just pick it so that we can have the opportunity to vote and we sit down on it. No, there are people living up under a bridge. If you don't believe me, I bet you can go right down the street here and look up under one of those bridges and you can see somebody's whole life up under that bridge. You see people sitting on the street corner begging for money. It's not money saying about begging for food. They're begging for money so that they can have a place to stay. And that is not right. We are our brother's keeper. And if we do not look at one another, God will not be pleased with us. You cannot go out and say, well, I made it by myself, that they got to pull themselves by the bootstraps. They ain't got no boots. No boots, no shoes, no socks. So how are you supposed to do that? So what I am saying to you is that this day and this time is so important. It's not whether or not you think you want to vote. No, you have to vote because your vote matters. And if your vote matters, you matter. And because you matter, we are all children of God, and we will grow together. We will live together. We will be the best that we can be. And if you have not noticed, I am a San Francisco 49er fanatic. And if I can be fanatical about a team, then we can be fanatical about getting the vote out, about making sure that our community is the best that it can be, that we can get the resources in our community that other communities have. So I'm just saying to you, make sure. I'm not asking, I am pleading with you to not only you go out to vote, but you make sure that your whole household, your community, whoever it is that you are in relationship with, that you ask them, we need to go out to vote together. Because if we vote together, we'll live together.
Next, we're going to hear from Minerva Cisneros.
Good afternoon. My name is Minerva Cisneros. I moved to the United States from Mexico 25 years ago after my husband died. I got government permission to be here and pay lawyer and a lot of money. I needed a safe place to live for with my two sons in medical service for my oldest son, Eduardo, who was blind, and he was 5 years old. That's why I came to Winston-Salem. I worked very hard for a factory here in Greensboro for many years and bought my own house. I paid taxes and help volunteer in my community. I will do anything and everything needed for my sons. In 2017, immigration told me I had 30 days to leave my children in my house to go to Mexico. People like you helped me when me and two youngest sons and I went to sanctuary at the United Church of Christ in Greensboro for almost 100 days. I was the first person in North Carolina to get a court order that allowed me to leave sanctuary and return to Winston. Because of people coming together and fight for justice, I now have permanent legal status in the United States. I am very happy for this, but I myself cannot vote, so I ask everyone to vote for the issues and policies that make the elected officials accountable to the people. When you vote for issues, you are voting for a living wage to help families afford a place to live and to keep their children for being hungry. When you vote, you are voting for policies to save our earth and health care for everyone. So more people can live and have what they need. When you vote, you are voting for fair immigration policies, and people are treated as a human being. And children are not put into cages. Your vote really matters, so you must vote like never before. Forward together.
Thank you, Minerva. And thank you, Tammy, so much for being here and for sharing your powerful testimonies. When we gather in these spaces and we hear these words, instead of applause, we like to say, somebody's been hurting our people. Say it with me. Somebody's been hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long, and we won't be silent anymore. Next, we're going to hear from Dinasha Williams from Raise Up.
Hello, so my name is Dinasha Williamson. I'm a worker, I'm a mother of 5 children, and I'm a proud member of Raise Up. I am here speaking for all the underpaid workers who are struggling to make ends meet, and we are organizing for a change. We are fighting to raise the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour. Our minimum wage has been stuck at $7.25 for 13 years, and it's dragging all of our wages down and keeping us stuck in poverty. I work at McDonald's and Wendy's. I make $12 an hour. It's more than minimum wage, and it is not a livable wage. I work for billion-dollar companies, but I have to depend on food and nutritional services to feed my family. I have to live in outdated public housing, which is not the type of environment that I want for my children, but I can't even afford to put my kids in extracurricular activities to enrich their lives. I want to be more sufficient, but minimum wage laws are holding me back. And I'm not just speaking for myself, but for the other 47% of North Carolina workers that make less than $15 an hour. We need to make it easier for workers like me to form unions so that we can move up and advance. These companies should not take for granted our presence, because kiosks and computers can never replace us. When we vote, we need to demand $15 minimum wage and workers' rights. We demand that elected officials support workers, not just big corporations. I'm fighting to ensure that my children don't go through the same struggles. And let's keep organizing and keep voting to make it a better future for all of our children. Thank you.
Somebody is hurting the workers, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Thank you, Denisha. Next, we'll hear from Sangria Noble from North Carolina Second Chance Alliance.
What do we want? A second chance. When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Sangria Noble. I am the North Carolina Second Chance Alliance Coordinator with NC Forward Justice. I am born and raised here in Greensboro. I'm the coordinator for Gifford County and Mecklenburg County. I'm here from a directly impacted person standpoint for, speaking for all. I served 3 years in NCCIW. My voters' rights were taken away from me. The feeling of that is unspeakable. And I say that because I'm a proud mother of 5. At the time, it was a proud mother of 3. I'm very active in my children's educational needs in the school systems. I pay taxes. And at that time, being not able to have a voice, but still have to live by society's rules, pay taxes, just in general, the feeling is unbearable by not being able to have a voice. So I stand here today, I have that voice. And 56,000 people across North Carolina also have that voice now. Approximately about 3,000 here in Gifford County, 3,000 a little above, rights were restored on July 27th of this year. So now what does that say? That says power for us. That says power for our people. That says that we can change. We can change the seats. We can change the legislator seats now. We can change the senator seats now. We can change the judges' seats now. We can change DA seats. We can change the seats down to the drivers in the police cars. We have the power now. Okay, I'm speaking out to everyone. Everyone, this is a change of the century. This is a change of the century. Okay, if we can get these 56,000 of people who's on release sentences and on probation, get them out. Let's register to vote. Let's come out. Let's come out and vote, and let's make a change. Let's make a change for the nation, because if we can change the South, we can change the nation. If we can change the South, we can change the nation. We're moving forward and not one step back.
is hurting our families, and has gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. We're going to watch a video now of Beth Schaefer, a Raise Up leader from South Carolina.
How y'all doing? My name is Beth Schaefer. I'm with Raise Up, Charleston Fight for 15, and a union. I have been struggling to pay my bills since I've been working at 16 years old. I work full-time at KFC and a second job at a gas station. I work 64 hours a week, 7 days a week. I am exhausted. Yes. My wages are so low that I'm facing eviction every month. Eviction would mean that me and my disabled father would be homeless. I know I'm not alone. There are so many people who work for billion-dollar companies and still end up homeless. Why? Because the federal minimum wage is sentencing us to poverty. My home state of South Carolina is like the rest of the South and the Midwest. Our minimum wage has not gone up in 13 years. Our government is catering to corporate greed, and us workers are paying the price. And it's disproportionately black and brown workers, especially women of color, who are carrying the burden of a minimum wage in this country. So we demand that our government raise federal minimum wage to at least $15 an hour. We demand that our government pass the PRO Act and make it easier for workers to form unions, because we need a collective voice on our jobs. Low-wage workers, we run this country. It's our labor that creates wealth. We have so much power than we realize. When we organize, we have the power to change this country. So keep organizing and keep fighting.
Transportation problems, but Bishop is on his way. But I want to first make you aware that there's some other low-wage workers that you're in touch with every day. Some of them are sanitation workers, some of them are bus drivers and others. So there are some UE 150 people in this room. So can't quite see you. Y'all stand up and let us applaud you for being essential workers, but also voting workers. And you know, culture is such a big part. Did you want to say something, Kate? Okay. So, you know that culture is such a big part of any movement. So we have with us, among us, one of our folks, Reverend Dr. Marilyn King Lewis, who is going to bring a song. It's either going to be her or her daughter. Thank you. And she is one of the associate pastors here at New Zion Missionary Baptist Church, and a member of the Black and Brown Women's Voting Collective. Yes.
You know, I always have to praise God first. I have to do that. Okay, this song I will be singing is Come On, Come On, Come On, Don't You Want to Vote? And then register somebody, Don't You Want to Vote? Come on, come on, come on, don't you want to vote? Come on, come on, come on, don't you want to vote? Come on, come on, come on. Don't you want to vote? Yes, I'm going to vote. Register somebody. Don't you want to vote? Register somebody. Don't you want to vote? Register somebody. Don't you want to vote? Yes, I'm going to vote. Come on, come on, come on, yeah. Don't you want to vote? Come on, come on, come on. Don't you want to vote? Come on, come on, come on. Don't you want to vote? Yes, I'm going to vote. Oh, I'm voting, yeah. Yes, I'm going to vote. I'm voting, yes, I'm going to vote. Are you going to vote? Yes, yes, I'm going to vote. Yes, I'm going to vote.
Give it up again for Reverend Marilyn. Wow, I feel so energized now to get out and vote. So the next portion of the program, and then afterwards, we will be hearing from Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II, senior lecturer and president of Repairers of the Breach. But first, before we go to his remarks, myself, Brianna, and then also Mrs. Joyce Johnson from Beloved Community Center are going to be talking a little bit about why it is so important to vote, and also talk a little bit about what's happening in North Carolina, because we always say in the movement that the worst thing to be, does anybody know? Is loud and wrong. And so the whole purpose of this program and y'all coming together and us being here together in Greensboro, across Congressional District 6, is quite clearly just saying if we ever needed to vote for democracy, if we ever needed to vote for justice, we sure do need to do it now, right? And we just want to keep saying this because we know that in the midterms and in the upcoming election, we're not only building for this election, but we are building a grassroots movement also for beyond. But we have to come out with the power of our vote. So that is why we're here on this first mass mobilization organizing tour of the North Carolina congressional districts. And I wanted to real quickly, before we go into some of this small voting program and mini training, if you will, thank all of our partners who have been supporting and have helped us put on this mass mobilization tour. I'd like to thank Repairers of the Breach, the North Carolina Poor People's Campaign, Beloved Community Center, which is run and founded by the Johnsons, Raise Up and Fight for 15, Forward Justice, Second Chance Alliance, as well as the Transformative Justice Coalition. Can we just give a hand of thanks to the partners? Great. Oh yeah, I'm hunching a little. Okay. So what we're going to do now is just talk a little bit about where we're at and what systemic poverty looks like across the country and also in North Carolina. And it's so important that we look at these figures and learn together, because this is what will incite and aggravate our moral and righteous anger as we're getting out to the polls. So this is all going to end in a big call to action that Ms. Joyce Johnson will be doing. So we're going to learn a little bit, and then we're going to talk about how we all can get involved in this district towards the elections and making sure that we are getting out to the polls. Could we go to the next slide, please? The next one, we're going to talk about poverty first in the United States. We talk about in this movement that there are these interlocking injustices that require an intersectional response. One of those pillars is systemic poverty. Did you know that there are over 140 million people in the United States that are poor or low income? And you can see right here that these numbers are staggering and they're also morally wrong. We have 43.5% of the population that are poor and low income. That is almost half of the country, right? We live in the richest country ever to exist. It should not be that 43.5% of the population are poor, low wealth, and low wage. You can see here that we have 60.4% of black folks in this country, which are 26 million, are poor and low wealth. 64.1% of the Latinx people in this country, which are 38 million, are poor. 40.8% of Asian folks, which are 8 million people in this country, are poor or low wealth. 58.9% of Native and Indigenous people, which are 2.14 million, are poor and low wealth in this country. And then lastly, we have 33.5% of white people, who are 66 million people in this country that are poor and low wealth. And one of the reasons that Reverend Barber, and we always talk about in the movement, it's so important to look at all the races, is that we have to come across all lines of division, come together, and vote. Even though the percentage proportionately is 33.5%, you can see that the highest amount of folks who are poor or low wealth in this country are poor white folks. So that means that we have to interconnect it with the struggle of systemic racism and realize that black and brown folks are being disproportionately impacted by racism, but we cannot not cross the line of division and reach out to poor white voters as well, because they are also the poor voters who will unlock the potential of a moral agenda in this country. So Bree is going to talk a little bit more about some of the slides that we have and why it's so important that we're learning this together. Bree?
Thank you. Let's North Carolina poverty statistics. If we can get, it might be the next one. We might be going a little out of order here. Here we go. 44% of North Carolinians are poor and low wealth. That is almost half of the people living in this state. 53% of those are children. 53% of our children in North Carolina are living in poverty or low wealth households. 46% of women, 58% of black people, 67% of Latinx people, 36% of white people. 47% of North Carolina's workforce, half of the workforce, is making less than a living wage. And we know the minimum wage federally hasn't gone up in the last 12 or 13 years. And we know that working at the minimum wage here in North Carolina, it would take 94 hours of work in a week to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. That's just wrong. There are 1 million people, next slide please. There are 1 million people in North Carolina who have no health insurance. 32% of census tracts are at risk for being unable to afford water. And over 9,000 people in North Carolina are homeless as of 2018. And we know that things got worse for people during the pandemic. Right, and so we're talking about the power of low income and poor voters today. Look at this, almost 40% of eligible North Carolina voters are poor, low wealth, and low wage. And over 80% of them are already registered, but hundreds of thousands of these voters did not turn out to vote in 2020. This is our work. This is why we're here today, to build and make sure that we are reaching out in every congressional district to poor and low wealth voters and helping folks understand the power that they have in this upcoming election. If you can show the map, might be a couple slides back. There it is. This shows the margin of victory in the 2016 presidential election. And it shows the percentage of eligible low-income non-voters, eligible low-income folks that did not vote in 2016. If they had voted, what percentage could have met that margin to change an election? Look at how small some of these percentages are. If we look at Michigan, 1%, 1 percentage change of low-income voters getting out to vote could shift an election. Here in North Carolina, just 19%. So if we can build deep and reach into community and make sure that poor and low-wealth voters are registered, understand the power they have in this election, and have a plan to get to the polls on Election Day, we can have a great, great impact on elections. So I'm going to pass it over to Mrs. Johnson, who's going to talk a little bit about what that's going to look like, what the strategy is here locally.
Thank you, Kate and Brianna. Look at the three of us. We are you. There are a few other, thank you, Louis. There are a few others of us as well who represent the plethora of folk in this district and, of course, in North Carolina. Different races, different sexual orientations, certainly different incomes, but we're mainly talking about poor and low wealth. So let's talk about what we're going to do in the Congressional District number 6 that we're already doing. Some of you already know about the Black and Brown Women's Voting Initiative, yes? And whether you're black or brown or woman or not, you are a part of that as we're getting out the vote. So already we have a couple of town halls, people's town halls. I'm going to be quick because the bishop is coming on in. We want you to hear from him. Already planned. One on September the 15th at the Church of Reverend Mark Sandler, who's sitting right back there. He was with us on that long bus trip to D.C. and participated in our Elder Youth of Orange activity. But at the Presbyterian Church of the Covenant on September 15th, we will be gathered for a town hall where more of these testifiers will speak, the candidates will listen, and we will then ask for answers from them and also hold them accountable. So we will also be partnering with other folks in Greensboro, the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, the youth groups, to do some more training. Make sure you signed up so that you can get this information later. Blessings to you, and let's get out that vote.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We are going to start passing around some pledge cards. This is what we need you to fill out so that we can stay in touch and talk about all of the upcoming opportunities over the next 2 months to get out in the streets and do this work. We know we've got to get into the community, we've got to knock on doors, we've got to get on the phones, we've got to be reaching out to everyone we know and make sure that they understand the power they have in this election. Reverend Kaz is going to be passing around some pledge cards. If you'll fill this out, you're going to see different check boxes. You can tell us what you're interested in doing to get involved. Let us know, and we'll follow up and make sure that you have the information. We're going to be doing coordinated community canvassing. There's going to be text banking. We have a text banking program that allows us to reach tens of thousands of voters very quickly and make sure that they have information on how they can register to vote, where their polling place is, do they want to volunteer and get more involved. So you can canvass, you can text bank, and we'll stay in touch and provide more information about that.
Let me interrupt because I want to make a correction. How y'all doing? Got a lot of echo. You know, I'm trying to train these young folk, but I'm trying to train them in the game. I have to coach in the game, and I hope they don't get offended. But Michael Jordan became great because he took coaching in the game. All the great ones get great because they take coaching in the game. So we're in the game, right? It's echo. And let me just thank all of the people who had anything to do with pulling us here today. And I was going to speak, but I'm not. I'm just going to make a few passing remarks. Because so much has been said, and because we have listening groups all around the district, and you know, you can't hold people on live stream for so long. Am I right? Right? About an hour. So that's one of the things you have to always remember when you're doing a program. If you got live stream going on, after an hour you lose people, right? So we had this room because we wanted people to spread out for COVID's sake. Because when you're organizing people, you have to care about people. Some folk organize folk and they don't love them. But if you love folk, you're going to try to make sure they're safe. Also, this is nonpartisan. So that's why we invited any candidates, Republican or Democrat, to come and listen to the testifiers. Let me make one, can you helping me? That's an echo. Thank you. One correction. We're not trying to get thousands of voters to the polls. Wrong language. That's not what this is. We're trying to get thousands of poor and low wealth and low wage folks to the polls. So you got to be clear about why we're here, because the messaging will get all wrapped up. We're not trying to do the traditional organizing. We're trying to talk to the folk that most of the damn politicians don't want to talk to. Let's be real. When the last time you heard a politician in this state talk about the 1 million people that are without health care? Y'all can stay up here because I got something for you to do. Come on. You learning. You're going to be strong after this. You can make it through me. You'll make it through anybody. You'll take on the KKK. You think about it. Y'all think about it. We got all this language. It's so, when have you seen, Republican or Democrat, candidate in this state, have a press conference with all the folk that are uninsured? Huh? 1 million people. %49 of all North Carolinians make less than a living wage. That's over 2 million people. When have you seen a politician, black, white, or other, say, we're going to organize that 49% and hold press conferences with them and talk about them openly and bring them, put them in their TV ads? %49 of North Carolinians make less than a living wage of $15 an hour. When is the last time you heard a politician say the poor? Y'all talk. In their ads, in their campaign, low wage, low wealth. What do we hear? Middle class and working America. Well, 47%, 45% of North Carolinians are not middle class and working. They are poor and low wage workers. 1/3 of all poor people live in the South. 1/3 of all white people live in the South. And by the way, when I talk about these numbers, Dr. King said in '65 that the greatest fear of the aristocracy of this nation was for the masses of poor Negroes and poor black folk to come together and form a voting bloc that would fundamentally shift the economic architecture. That's why this meeting is happening. That's why we're having gatherings in every congressional district. This is not just normal get out the vote stuff. That's why we got 5 of these this week. $87 million people in America underinsured or uninsured, and even coming out of a pandemic, we still have not passed universal health care. 140 million people poor and low wealth in this country. 140 million people, 43% of the nation, and the most damning thing is 52% of our children are poor and or low wealth. When's the last time you heard a presidential debate on that? When's the last time you heard a Senate debate on that? When's the last time you heard a governor's race debate that? When is the last time you've heard a congressional debate on that? And when I've said this, and some politicians get mad, they say, look, I grew up poor. That's not the issue that you grew up poor. The issue is, who are you talking about and lifting up now in your conversations and in your political ads? Because not only do we have 49% of North Carolinians who make less than a living wage, do you know how many of y'all gonna go into a restaurant this week? I hope you were nice to the people, because you know they don't make but $2.13 an hour. When has any politician lifted and said, I'm running to change this? It's like we scared of the poor and low wealth. In North Carolina, 48%, I'm still getting that echo, are poor. Let me break that down to you. 4.7 million residents, 4.7 million people in this state are poor and low wealth. And in the districts you're here, what is it, 6th and what, 12? There's either congressional districts, you've got nearly 200 or 200 plus thousand people who are poor and or low wealth. 4.7 million residents in North Carolina. 56% of our children are poor and low wealth in North Carolina. That's 1.3 million. 49% of women in North Carolina, women. We can't have political discussions and talk about just the women vote and not talk about the poor and low income women vote. 62% of people of color. This is the measurement that looks at 200% of poverty. In other words, who is $500 away from economic ruin? 62% of all black people and people of color in this state are poor and or low wealth or low wage. How can anybody be running campaigns and not be talking about how your campaign is going to impact 62% of one race of people? 39% of all white people. Now watch this, because you know those that would criticize us, they think when we talk about poverty, we just talking about black folk. There are 2.3 million people of color that are poor in North Carolina, low wealth and low wage. That means people who are working and yet low wage and low wealth. But there are 2.4 million white people. So there are more white poor and low wealth and low wage folk in North Carolina than there are black. And yet, look at the headlines during this political season. We got 180,000 veterans that are poor and low wealth in this state. Think about that. 180,000 veterans that make less than $35,000 a year. God bless the troops. Really? 32% of the census tracts in North Carolina are at risk for being able to afford water. There are 9,000 homeless people in North Carolina. In North Carolina, you have to work at the current minimum wage, and our minimum wage is just a tad bit higher, thanks to Alma back in the day, 2007. She wouldn't give up after 10 years of fighting. We raised it a little bit, but even the way we've raised it, in North Carolina, you have to work 87 hours a week. 87 hours a week to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. But where are the politicians that are putting these voices front and center? Now, I was told one time, but Reverend Barber, that's too sad to be talking about. If you're going to win, you got to be happy. You have to present a good face. I thought people ran for office to change stuff. I thought policy. And all of this is policy. None of this is personal morality, people's personal failure, poverty, the lack of health care, the lack of living wages, not having clean water. That's policy. And the only way you deal with it is you must put people in office who will change policy. So these gatherings are not about left versus right and Democrat versus Republican. They're not about personalities and parties. It's about principles and position. Where do you stand in relationship to the poor and low wealth and low wage people of this state? And the reason why we're doing this is because guess what? And I'm through. 681,000 poor and low wealth people didn't vote in the last election. Poor and low wealth people. And you know the number one reason, we've gone all over this country from the mountains to the coast, the number one reason that they say they've not voted, nobody talks to us. Nobody talks to us. Politicians don't come to our community. They don't bring the cameras there. Everything is so pristine and pretty. Nobody talks to us. It's not the voter suppression. They do talk about voter suppression and the lack of transportation, but that's not the first thing. The first thing is the political machinery tries to act like we are invisible. And so we started asking the question, well, how do you make somebody talk about you? And we said one of the reasons, if they won't talk about you, you got to start talking about yourself. And so we said, well, let's see if we got some power to amplify. And we found out that, for instance, in North Carolina, poor and low wealth people make up 47% of the electorate. 47%. Yeah, that seems strange to you. I see the frown. I didn't believe it either. 47% of the electorate is poor and or low wealth or low wage. 47%. In fact, in the nation now, God has fixed it so that the stones that the builders rejected have become the chief cornerstone in terms of building a new political reality, because poor and low wealth people in the last election represented 33% of the total votes. Poor and low wealth and low wage. Poor and low wealth people represent 30-some% of the electorate across the country. And in battleground states, poor and low wealth people represent 45% of the electorate. Now, I'm not a strategist. But it seems to me, if you got a group of voters that represent 30% of the electorate across the board, Dr. Johnson, and 45% in battleground states, and you're not directly talking to them, that seems to be morally irresponsible, constitutionally inconsistent, politically inept, and economically insane. And in North Carolina, it's 47%. In North Carolina, there is not one election that we had in the last few years where the margin of victory for whoever won was greater than 25% of poor and low wealth voters who are eligible to vote and didn't vote. I didn't say 30%. I didn't say 40%. I said if you mobilize just 25% of the 681,000 poor, low wealth, and low wage voters who have not voted, if you just mobilize 25% of that 25% could overcome any margin of victory from the president, the governor, the Senate, right on down. I'm not a strategist, but somebody ought to take that seriously. I mean, if we're serious about changing who makes policy, and somebody ought to be talking, Brianna, to this community seriously. Because you're talking about 40+% of the electorate. Poor and low-wealth people made up 58 million of the votes that happened in the last presidential election. 58 million, over 33% of the electorate. And yet sometimes the people that make up far less in terms of potential and real voting power get more conversation. How is that? How is that? That a block this big, and so these gatherings is about saying the poor, low wealth, low wage voters, and I'm through, if we ever needed to vote for democracy and justice, poor, low wealth, low wage voters need to vote now. And you no longer need to say they're not talking to us, you need to make them hear you. And if you're an advocate for poor and low wealth, blah, 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 if you're a moral leader, we all ought to be connecting together and mobilizing this sleeping giant. And it's waking up. 150,000 people showed up in Washington, D.C. on June 18th from all over the country, from 50 states that look like, and millions online. And so we're going to every congressional district starting this weekend, calling for poor and low wealth people to come out, understand their power, those who are moral leaders, those who are religious leaders. We're calling for all politicians to come, regardless of where you sit, and listen to these testifiers. The testifiers you heard before I came in here, that's the power block. That's the power block. If you speak to them and talk to them and say, if I get elected, this is what I'm going to do to affect your reality, and you move that 47% of the electorate, you can't lose. But if you leave them untalked about and unengaged and uninvolved, you cannot win, because God can't even let you win if you don't care for the poor and the least of these. So we're going everywhere. We're leaving now, got to go to Wilmington. We're in Goldsboro tomorrow. We're in Wilson the next day, then Winston-Salem. And then on Tuesday, this young lady here, who's our director of Mobilizing, Kate Ziegler, and that we're announcing a nationwide campaign to reach 5 million voters. Poor, low wealth, and low wage. Starting with 15 so-called battleground. We believe every state is a battleground if you factor in poor and low wealth people. But we're going to start with 15 battleground states and spread out. 5 million voters we're touching, because we also found out something. In Michigan, for instance, you know it would only take 1% of poor and low wealth and low wage voters that didn't vote the last time to cover the margin of victory. In Georgia, 7%. In Florida, 4%. In Texas, 21%. These numbers are staggering. But what's more staggering is to see how too often we live in a time that treats corporations like people and people like things. And too often we live in a time where it seems like to get one good step forward, we got to compromise with so much wrong. So in order to get climate change, you got to compromise and allow pipelines and drilling on. and in order to get passage of relieving student debt, which is great, which is a great step, but in order to do that, you got to agree that you won't pass living wages. And if we pass living wages right now, if we change the minimum wage to $15 an hour, $330 billion would be pumped into the economy immediately. And 32 million people would be lifted out of poverty and low wage. And in our state, 2 million people would move from poverty and low wages to above poverty and low wages. So anybody in this state that's running for office and is serious about moving poor and low wealth people and winning, and they're not talking about, if you elect me, I'm going to ensure living wages get passed, what are you doing? And so I don't know, Nelson, George, I don't know if Republicans are going to show up in November. I don't know if Democrats are going to show up in November. But what I know, what I believe, is that if poor, low wage, and low wealth people of North Carolina, the moral conscience, we better show up. If there's any hope at fundamentally changing this democracy. And it's got to start a lot of it in the South, where you have more politicians, where you have more poverty in the South than ever, and more politicians that vote against the poor than ever. So if it's going to start, it's got to start here. And if we are going to have fundamental change, what we need is not an immoral, mean insurrection. And what we need is not pessimistic resignation. But what we need, like we have never needed before, is a moral, engaged resurrection of poor and low wealth and low wage voters. If we ever needed to vote for democracy and justice, we sure do need to vote now. That's why we are here. That's why we've come. That's why we're going all over these congressional districts. This effort, Repairs and Breach and others, is specifically targeted to who wants to help mobilize poor, low wealth, and low wage communities. Who wants to help push these issues into the political atmosphere and conversation? Who wants to mobilize 20% of the 681,000 poor and low wage and low wealth voters who didn't vote in the last election? Because with just 20%, we can overcome any margin of victory of any campaign that's running anywhere in this state. I said I wasn't going to talk long, so I'm going to shut up. Now you organize these people. Now you tell them why we need to be pushing out. Now you get people to sign up, because we're looking for an army to rise that is serious about understanding that if we don't lift poor, low wage, and low wealth people in this state, then we have failed. Our politics have failed. Our state has failed. But inside of that failure is success. If we do, history will record that we took seriously what Dr. King said 3 years before he was shot, when he said it at the end of the Selma to Montgomery March. If you want to transform America, you must mobilize the masses of poor and low wealth people into a powerful voting bloc that can fundamentally shift the economic architecture of this nation and bring into being the beloved community. Y'all got it? Organize now.
Can we say forward together? Forward together. One more time, forward together. Thank you so much to Reverend Dr. Barber and Repairers of the Breach, as well as to the partners, and to Miss Joyce Johnson and Reverend Nelson Johnson from Beloved Community Center. So as you also heard, Reverend Dr. Barber said, if you haven't had a pledge card yet, could you raise your hand? Everyone, please take a pledge card. It's very easy to sign up and to put your name and your contact information. The first step and the way, a pledge card is a smaller postcard that we have. If you raise your hand, we'll make sure our organizers bring you one. We have someone displaying them quite nicely over here. Please make sure to fill that out. It's a small, quick thing to do. But that is a first real and tangible step to doing exactly what Dr. Barber and the Johnsons have laid out here today, which is that we need to mobilize this extremely powerful voting bloc, the power bloc of this district and this state, and to reach out to poor voters in our community. We need to sign up first, and then people that are local here in the community will be reaching out with next steps of how to get out and make sure that we are reaching out to poor and low-wealth folks across this district. I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Joyce Johnson for closing words, and then after we close the program, please feel free to stand as we transition into closing the program. We will be playing a song. Yes. Great. Great. Thank you. All right, so we're going to give y'all time to fill them out, and we're going to collect them. So please raise them up if you need them collected.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate. And thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Barber. And let's hold those cards up so they can be collected. And this is an action by filling out the card, but I want also a commitment of the heart that will be translated through your feet, through your mouth, through your hands, however you are called to support this effort, to organize, to inspire, to bring out poor and low wealth folk who, first of all, might have to struggle with their jobs schedules to even get to the polls. But we can figure that out through our various organizations in the 6th Congressional District, through our churches, through our synagogues, through our mosques, through our schools. We can figure out how to help our neighbors know the issues. We've heard a lot of information here, and it will be available to you. It'll end up getting emailed to you, texted to you. You can go online to Repairers of the Breach, which is called breachrepairers.org online. You can go to the Beloved Community Center to get this information and let folk know you got the power. Use it. You've got the key to the future for your children. You've got the lever, however you pronounce it, to ride on what your grandparents and other people did before. You've got the possibility for yourself right now. Raise Up has shown it. Fight for 15 is showing it. Sister Tammy working in housing has shown it. Other folk, Sister Minerva working around many of our workers who don't even have the right to vote. But we can vote for them because voting for and with them is voting for ourselves. So do I have a commitment from you that you are going to work on phone banking, or you're going to work, who's going to do some phone banking? And you're going to direct those calls to poor and low wealth folk. And we have that information now through the band and all that. We all belong to these different organizations where we can get names of folk who are already registered but have not been moved to vote. But through a conversation with us, through some interaction with us, they can get out to vote. How many people would be prepared to do texting, those of you who are more advanced than some of the others of us? That's good. How many people are prepared to get out in your neighborhoods, at your job, at the bus stop, wherever? I see my co-leader over here, Lolita Watkins, jump right up and she'll get to it. The canvassing, the touching folk, yes. So remember that commitment, and we will be back in touch with you, and you don't have to wait for us to email or call you. You can contact us. You got a green leaflet coming in here about an upcoming event on September the 15th. If you're from UNCG, it's right across the street from your school. Come on out. But we can and must organize our poor and low wealth workers ourselves to have our voices heard at the ballot box, and that our issues and demands that we have go along with that vote. I'm going to just let my husband say a few words, and I think that Kate may want to come and say a few more things, but come on.
You know, every time I hear Reverend Barber, he says something so profound, so meaningful, and that the need to focus at a point. Yes. What is the point? The point is the people who are rejected, neglected, and pushed to the bottom. If we can actually do better work in getting them to come up. Let me invite the people who spoke to just come up, and I want you to be seen more. And it's easy to come to a meeting and you feel real good in the meeting. And Reverend Barber is bringing it, and it's connecting, and it's making sense. But then you leave, and yeah, come on up, everybody. Because these are people and these are faces. Multiply this 5,000 times and think what the difference would be if we could organize at every occasion to do the work that has to be done. And actually, it's in several ways. Joyce has named those. We've got to call people and talk to them, and we got to know who to call. And we've got to come together and discuss exactly what Reverend Barber discussed here tonight in our meeting over at Presbyterian Church of the Covenant. My dear friend Z. Holler was the pastor there before the current pastor. And we've got to put our walking shoes on. And there's no substitute for walking up to, I met Tammy in Hampton Homes. I walked up and knocked on the door.
That's
Ray Warren.
Straighten that out.
Yeah, she's always straightening you out. She came to the door, and you know, we chatted for a while. You could feel the energy. There are people in the community, if somebody talked to them and communicated with them, they would step out. Not everybody. If you get 1 out of 5, you are making a big difference. So don't go in and hang your head down because 3 people closed the door on you and you didn't get to talk to them. If one of them talked to you, leave there strutting. Get that name and those numbers. And that's the way we got to do it. So we're going to be working together. And what you have here are just a few of the people who took the time to come out today to share their hearts, their spirits. But there are so many more people. And if we can do this, we can change the trajectory of North Carolina, and we can change the trajectory of the nation. And it doesn't have to be mean-spirited. It has to be clear, and it has to be powerful. We'll call a lie a lie. There's a lot of lying going on nowadays, but we won't hate people. We'll be trying to not so much win an argument. You argue with me, I argue back with you. We throw grenades at each other. We're trying to win a person away from how they're thinking to saying that we are much powerful, much more powerful, and a much better nation when we do this work together. So I'm just happy that Reverend Barber came, and I hope you're happy. Let's give him a big hand, even though he's out the door. And I don't know if it's all right. We're going to end with a song. I just want y'all to say hello again to the group so they won't forget you, you know?
I'm short, so I imagine that amongst others you will remember, not remember me, but remember my words and the people that I stand for.
All right now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, also don't forget about my people, the Latin, and please go and vote. And thank you for all the support, and thank you for being here and for everything you guys do for the Hispanic people.
Yes.
Yes. God loves you, and we do too.
Also, don't forget about all the fast food workers and single moms. I stand in proxy for everyone.
Yes.
Please go out and vote. It's imperative.
All you hamburger eaters. I think we want to close with a song.
Yes, so the music's going to be queued up. Stand up and, remember, movements are based on a lot of cultural feelings and what have you. So let's go out here energized to do what we promised to do, to get ourselves, but mainly our low-income voters out. You can call them, you can text them, you can do whatever way. Talk to them in the grocery store lines, looking at these big prices, at the gas pump, dealing with the price, and say, we can change this, and we're going to do it because we're going to go out and vote and bring 5 more friends with us. God bless all of you.
All right, so that's pretty much a wrap. Thank you again to the Johnsons and to Reverend Wright and to this amazing church, New Zion Missionary Baptist Church, for hosting us. We're going to cue up the last song, which is from June 18th in D.C., which was our Mass Poor Peoples and Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington. This is a movement song that we love very dearly. Please sing along. It's called Break Every Chain and On Your Way Out. These are actually for you. Please take as many as you like. They're in the pews for you to take home. There's lots of the important and very powerful facts that we had today. Please take these home, give them to folks in your community, put them up in your window, on your car, and thank you so much. Forward together. Forward together.
Not one step back.
Let's make the whole District 6 here this one room. Ready? Forward together.